Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good? Everything is good over here. I was just talking to our guest, which I will in a moment introduce, about all the concerts that I've got lined up or that I've gone to. I was telling him I went last week to see Alice Cooper, which was great. What a showman, man. That guy was like, huh? You know, I've gone to on and off, depending on the groups that come. You know, like I said, if I haven't seen them or maybe it's been years, I'll go. And some of them, you'll see just towards the end, you'll see people like get up and leave. They're trying to beat the crowds of the parking and all that. Alice Cooper, nobody. It was a packed house. It was packed. Not a person left till he finally marched off and we knew he wasn't coming back on the stage. He was great. Wow. Great musician, great showman. I mean, as far as the presentation, excellent. I was impressed. And I mean, I've gone to a lot of concerts, which the music is good, but you could tell, whether it's I don't want to say the special effects, but their background stuff is like they're down to the bare bones. But this guy, and it's not like how can I say, it's not like the effects were making up for the lack of music. No, on the contrary, it was a compliment. But he could have stood on there and no effects, and it would have still have been a good concert. So yeah, that's And the 2 days ago, I don't know, for those, these are for the people who've been around for a little bit. I went to Depeche Mode, which was great, fantastic. It was a full house, sold out concert. And again, that was a really good concert. My only disappointment was that they played music that they produced later, and they didn't hit as many of the older songs, which is what everybody wanted to hear. People are people and all that other stuff. So they sometimes did some songs, which the music was great. The singing, the music in and of itself was fantastic. But it was like, was that from your 2013 album that I never really heard? Why aren't you playing the stuff from? That was my only complaint. But besides that, it was a very good concert. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. All right. Otherwise, everything is good here. Let's get on to the good part. The good part is who the guest is this week on Stories of the Supernatural. And he's been here before. His name is James Rink. He is a super soldier, meditation practitioner, researcher, author, and video producer. Through his Super Soldier Talk series, he's helped awaken humanity to the secret activities of the covert government, uncovering topics such as brainwashing, trauma, milabs, which stands for military abductions, and covert harassment, all of which he had to endure his entire life as a product of Project Surrogate and Ultra MK Milab Super Soldier experimentation. His book, Lone Wolf, chronicles these projects. He spends his time perfecting the Neo Meditation device, which is a chi energizer that helps users relax during meditation that they can integrate themselves. He's an Eagle Scout, has a BS degree in business administration and finance, and associate's degree in horticulture technology.
Oh, God.
Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, James?
Yeah, I have a degree in horticulture. I also have a degree in finance. But my background is probably more my experiences from other lifetimes and so on. But I don't really want to go into that today. But
Well, let me ask you something. When you went into horticulture, and I'm going to ask this real quick because, and I'll explain later. Were you planning to go into agriculture or
No,
anything like that, or
no,
is
I was
just
going into landscape design. I worked with there were like two of the top landscape designers here in Charlotte, where I'm located, and I worked for one of them. And my job was just basically drafting and also trying to fix the little quirky things that the other, the guy I was working for didn't fix. So,
oh, okay?
yeah, so I did that for a couple years, and then I went into, well, I was an experiencer at that point, but I decided that I needed to put together a documentary about the financial system.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that because from as I was going through school through a degree in finance, I realized that the banking system is like corrupt. It's like, what? Wait a minute. This is what's
Yes.
causing inflation. They're trying to teach us these equations that don't make any sense. And it's like, well, it's caused inflation is caused because the banks are putting out all this money, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to pay taxes on the government. The Federal Reserve doesn't have to pay income taxes on the money that they're making on their trades and their international derivatives and so on. So, but we could
No,
spend
no,
a
I
long time
totally
going into all
agree.
that, but
You know what? I'm sure you heard of Kiyosaki, author of Poor Man, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, whatever. He came out in that book in the
yeah.
90s. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I agree with him on was he says that we don't teach finance to children in school, like, as part of your curriculum, as far as how to work with money, financing, things of that nature. And it's true, we don't. We should incorporate it as part of the whatever classes, yeah, we get, maybe arithmetic and then you get into mathematics, but unless you, like you said, you happen to go into finance or economics later on, there's a whole slew of people that really just get the basics of it, debit, credit, or, plus minus, and that's about it as far as their understanding of finance, or that's it. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things that people, what's the word? I don't want to say stupid because it was not stupidity. I think it was just that it seemed like, okay, that's being taken care of. That's all good. I'm not going to go into what are all these, these things that are going on in the world. And I want to say maybe even at that point, what people thought of as world economics was, it's not going to affect me. I'm talking a few years ago, it was like, I live in small town or middle town America or whatever. Yeah, what goes on in, these big banks and corporations, okay, I'm out of their league. I'm a little guy and I just want to get a mortgage for my house, that kind of deal. And I think a lot of people are realizing that you are affected by it, in some way, shape, or form, as far as what your potential is for, within the economic system. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, James, and this is something having to do, and I've heard you talk about it in some of your other interviews and shows, something about predictive programming and things of this nature. And sometimes, you know, some of, a lot of people will reference, let's say, Star Trek, but I'm going to use two stories that predate even World War II. One of them, okay, was, and by the way, both of them were eventually made into movies. And Hollywood, like always, kind of like did a little bit to the how can I say, to the storyline, but overall they were pretty much. The first one, all right, is, well, it went out by Who Goes There, all right, but it was written in 1938, and this guy, his name was John Campbell, but he was using the pen name as Donnie Stewart. This was like, as I was explaining to you, this is when the pulp, either detective, science fiction, or horror magazines were coming out, and he used to write under Donnie Stewart. That was his pen name, and he published it as The Thing from Another World. All right, and eventually, based on this story, I don't know if you remember, they did a version in 1951 called The Thing, and then in 1982 they did another one with Kurt Russell. Now, one of the things I wanted to include in that is, the setting, of course, is a base in Antarctica, which, there's a lot of things that sometimes now people are realizing, like, what's the attraction? And the idea, even from the novella, that this is basically a alien life form, all right, that is,
I'm going to go by what the original story was. 20 million years, it crash lands in Antarctica, and basically one of the things is frozen. It tries to get out of the spaceship, and they try to with thermite melt the ice, and what they end up is blowing up the spaceship. But they end up taking the thing back to their base, thinking, of course, it's dead. And a lot of it, and as you know, part of the thing is that it imitates life. In other words, it captures the person, it imitates it perfectly. And what's really interesting is in the story, not only could it reproduce, it was telepathic. It could put thoughts into your head. Do you think that guy was onto something when he wrote that story back in 1938 about any type of alien life form that's come here to Earth?
So I don't have the specifics on that particular case, but I know on some other cases, certainly there is secret files that get redacted and then are handed over to certain people in Hollywood to convert into a movie.
Right.
Like, for example, the Aliens movie, that is all basically a true story. There's a few things that were different in the original Aliens movie. For instance, the alien creature doesn't really like cold temperatures or outer space. Right. So they kind of made that up. But so that particular event was handed over to Senator Robert Byrd's office over, I guess he was like senator in West Virginia. So they converted that into a movie. So they got, So this was Jimmy Payne who said this. I think he said they got like $80,000 or something for that script. But yeah, so the other thing is Joneses in the movie, it was a cat, and the original story.
Right, Jonesy was a cat, right, exactly.
Jonesy, so was a gremlin. So yeah, so let's see here. So the Greys told because this was a Utami, Wayland Utami Corporation is a planetary corporation that exists in the here and now. It's part of the Breakaway. So, they were told by the Greys not to go past this system. It's about 150 light years behind Zeta Reticuli. They said it was quarantined to not go there. So they sent a scout ship over there to investigate. And that's, I think the first movie they showed that they went down to that planet. And what was it? Trying to remember the name. It'll come to my mind. But in the movie, they tell you the name of the planet. But yeah, so they brought back the xenomorph.
Right, that it had that signal. Then they go there, and all this time. And later on, I want to ask you. Well, and it's really interesting because that movie, The Thing, the first one. By the time they produced the movie, was post World War II, and of course, it's really funny because this kind of follows the same thing. And they're in Antarctica, and at the end, this reporter who was hanging out there, he's the ending scene of the movie is watch the skies, watch the skies. And you think, was this hype, or and this of course was, I don't want to say not really the Cold War, not yet kind of, but a lot of it was, like I said, in other words, the story was written pre-World War II versus production of the movie and after the World War II. And I thought it's always very interesting because that movie, plus like Aliens, it's always life forms that takes over humans. Well, in the case of it was not even humans, any life form. It could basically take over any life form, whether it was the dogs, the sled dogs, and in the other movies that they made up to the follow-up to the initial Aliens. You remember there was one time, I think it was in Aliens 3, where it takes over a dog also. And when it basically hatches, it's a variant of the original life form and the xenomorph. It looks more like a human if it busted out of a human. If it's busted out of a dog, then it's got that xenomorph dog look. So both of these life forms, these alien life forms, are basically, I don't want to say parasitic, but in a way they're kind of like parasitic. Like that's how they reproduce. In other words, this is how they go on, and if you want to look at it as in take over, how's that? Do you think that when you said that thing about which is interesting, so basically what you're telling me is that original Alien movie, the first one, Alien, which is that they go, I think it was a distress signal, and they go to check it out. You're telling me that that's based that really happened?
Yes, yeah, essentially. So it was LV-426, Hadley's Hope, and so they found one of those derelict vessels there with the xenomorphs. So the chest bursters and all that. So basically, it is real. What else about those things? I don't know how accurate the portrayal is, what the real ones actually look like, but I think they did a pretty good job. But so that's one example. There's another movie that was based on reality is the Predator movie.
Yes.
So that's when they went into, was it Cambodia? The original. So yeah.
No, wait, I think they were supposed to go. Well, I don't know where they filmed it, but they were originally going into South America. You remember that it was supposedly the pretext for the mission was that some government official had been taken hostage.
But I
were
thought it was
supposed to
maybe
go
like
in there.
Southeast Asia, like Vietnam or something during that period of time. And but the original one, I'm pretty sure that was Thailand or Cambodia. Well, anyway, Burma. So anyway, the point is, so that was Jimmy Payne. Also, he claimed that he was the guy that. Let's see here. What was the name of the actor that was playing the Predator? Not the Predator. The guy fighting Predator.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay, so but what was the name in the movie?
Dutch.
Okay, so there was a connection there. I don't remember what the connection is that one, but some of the characters, are based. They would change the names around, anagram a little bit,
right?
But anyway, so that particular one is also based. That was truth. So let's see here, another movie that was based on reality. Well,
you know what? And I want to say that one time, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. One time they were talking about when they were trying to make that Predator movie, how it didn't get made, and like the budget was like, like they were constricted as far as their budgeting. And I think why it became so popular was that people were like mesmerized with that camouflage cloaking ability. It was something so new. The idea, first of all, the setting, the premise, but that cloaking, where it blended in, that chameleon-like effect. I think people were blown away. And I want to say, how's this? When something triggers like a moment of recognition, like, yeah, you're watching a sci-fi fantasy movie kind of, but there's part of it that you're thinking. And after this, I've heard of people describing encounters with things that do exactly what was portrayed in that movie.
So another one was not a movie, but it was Star Trek. So the initial Star Trek that was based on, of course, the Breakaway coexists with us. We just are not aware of it. So the Enterprise actually has, it shows like these two spikes that come off with the engines on it. So
yes.
The real Enterprise has 4 of those spikes. So Jimmy Payne, we did an episode on this, but the movie Star Trek 4 is basically a documentary, except it wasn't whales, it was the Loch Ness. So they were trying to lift the Loch Ness, and it had a little baby there. It's about the size of the baby was the size of a Volkswagen. So they wanted the airlift it up, so they brought in the Enterprise and they retrofitted it, and it's not designed to operate in gravity environment. So when they were lifting it off, it was making the scariest sound you can imagine. But they did get it off and sent it off world to be with its family, I guess.
Let me ask you something. Is the Loch Ness, how's this? Is it an earthling? Is it an earth creature or not? I guess what I'm saying is its original environment here, or is it off planet?
I really don't think they knew. My understanding is it was trapped there, and it looks like it'd been trapped there for a long time. And how it got there, I don't know. Maybe it came from inner Earth. maybe a portal opened up, or maybe it's just been there a long time when all the other ones are gone. But I mean, if it had a baby, then obviously, I mean, there'd be more of them around.
Well,
but,
right. If and here we go. If we think of as our own carbon base that you need the male, female, forms of reproduction. So that's if we go based on that, maybe that's interesting when you think about it. How did it mate? How did it reproduce? Can it self-reproduce somehow or other? I don't know. That's very interesting.
Well, Jimmy Payne said they are very friendly. They would,
Really?
as you would get near the tank, it would try to splash them with water.
Let me tell you something. So many, and and when was okay? I have to go back and see that movie. I haven't seen it so long, but I have to put it into that context. Now that you say that, and look at it again.
Right. So, here, Captain Kirk. That was a fantasy. That, I mean, he never existed, but Spock existed. Spock was about 4 foot tall, and he had these big ears, and basically he's like an elf. So he would like to, or the elf people would like to touch the human ears because they weren't pointed, so they're kind of rounded. Right. Anyway, but yes, that was another.
Oh, we're okay. It's like usually the other way around. We're like, wow, what's going on with those ears?
And they also like to eat a lot of junk food. So when they would go up to when Spock, I guess he would have been wearing prosthetics and makeup, whatever.
Well, you know what? That's you remember when that movie, The Gremlin, came? Here we're going where I'm having hot tub time moments. When the Gremlins came out, that it was don't feed it after midnight. The junk food and stuff like that. And that's what it made me think of.
Exactly. So they have a high metabolism. They need a lot of junk food to keep going. But anyway, so let's see here. The engineer was from Scotland. That's why they call him Scotty.
Okay.
But other than I think that's pretty much that covers that one.
Because they were trying to, when they produced the show, obviously, they were trying to make it look like, of course, this is future world, and it's a cross, racial, cross country. Everything was different. That's why you had Uhura, and then you had Zulu, and then you had what's his face, the guy that was the Russian guy. Everybody was, in other words, they represented Earthling or Earth going out into and then James T. Kirk, who wanted to repopulate all the universe with his genetics. And I'm just on that show that he got together with all the alien life forms if they were women. So I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah. Well, in that timeline, there was nuclear war, and humanity got reset. So they showed basically it was San Francisco turning into a dump, and look what's happening today.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna do it sometime. Not too long ago, I was watching one of those Dirty Harry movies. All right, which of course was they were 1970s. They were filmed in San Francisco. And I was looking at it, and I almost became nostalgic. By the way, I've never lived in San Francisco. I only went to California because my son was in the Navy in Coronado Islands. So I went out there a few times, and I went to San Francisco, but I mean, but I was nostalgic because it was like that place in that movie doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't. And, in the movie, obviously, this wasn't like a perfect city with no crime or anything, but it was like, wow, what a difference. What's become of that place. It was like, it's a terrible thing.
Certainly. Well, so let's see here. Any other movies?
Yes, I'm going to ask you this real quick, and you're going to tell me, because behind the scenes, everybody knows about that movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Well, the original story to that was called Farewell to the Master. It came out in 1940, again, pre-World War II. Now, the original story is just like the beginning. Here comes this saucer, this spacecraft. By the way, it doesn't fly down; it just appears. Okay, and by the way, the setting of the story is not present day. It's like a futuristic Earth. Okay, it appears. All right, and down comes Klaatu, the Earthling, and then the robot. Right. And right when this happens, there's a crazy. First, it had landed there, and everybody was wigged out, and they were watching it. And finally, the human comes out, and then behind the robot, and there's a crazy guy who thinks they're here to get us, shoots Klaatu dead. This is a story from the book. They make a big memorial, and the robot stands there immobile for like 3 months. They're kind of worried because they're thinking, is this civilization thinking they're going to come and get us, this advanced technological? At the end of the movie, I'm going to fast forward through it. There's a newspaper reporter who one of the time realizes that this robot, when everybody's gone, because they made like a memorial around where they buried Klaatu, is moving. Come to find out, this robot can reproduce or clone things or humans or life forms just by the sound they make. Like, let's say if they heard you talking, they could reproduce you, basically like cloning, even without genetic material. But at the very end, you know, the Gort, but it was called Newt in the thing, he's going back, and they all tell him, please tell your masters that it was an accident. We did not mean to kill your emissary. It was an accident. Please, I'm sorry. And the robot at the end leans down to this newspaper reporter and tells him, and they're like, you know, they're telling him, please tell your master. And then he leans over and he tells the newspaper, I am the master. In other words, the whole basis was everybody's thinking that the human is the master. In the story, the robot or robotics or AI, and you know what we're going down round and round with AI now, is the master. Okay. And at the end, the guy says he never tells anybody what the robot whispered to him, because he's thinking everybody's going to be like big wig out. Now, here, fast forward, we're going round and round with this thing with AI and what's going to happen as far as, you know, is AI going to take over? What do you think, or what is your experience, you know, as far as AI and humans or other living types of beings?
Well, the movie Terminator is based on some truth, but that was from another, well, in the future timeline, another alternate reality that sometimes bleeds over. So a lot of these movies that enter into popular pulp fiction, science fiction, and so on. So a lot of it is just a bleed over, like the zombie movies of Umbrella Corporation. That's the Resident Evil. So that's also based on reality, my understanding, and people I've interviewed. Certainly, we got another one. I was trying to look it up. It's called Forbidden Planet with that robot.
I know. I remember Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, so that one is also partly a documentary. But yeah, so like,
let me ask you: Do you think, or in your experience, or people that you've talked to, are these big corporations? Let's say, like you said, the Umbrella Corporation. We'll use them as an example, but there's other ones. Are the ones, how's this, at the top pulling the strings? Are they human, or are they aliens as far as who dictates what happens?
I would say they are not so much humans or aliens. It's more like they're negative astral beings occupying a certain physical body. Like, for instance, we have this group called Monarch Solutions. So Monarch has a facility located underneath the Toronto. It stretches out for 100 miles. So that particular facility is absolutely massive, and it predates the flood. So
really,
so the beings there that run at Paul Serene, he runs Monarch Solutions, but it looks like a lot of the scientists are been around for a very long time with re-aging technology. The clone of Paul Serene in our reality is the actor Kevin Spacey. So just give you an example for that. But another planetary corporation, Umbrella Corporation, which exists in another another alternate reality. But Umbrella was headed by Richard Bay. So in our reality, he is the actor Tom Cruise. So but yeah, so yeah, we have a lot of bleed overs. I'm assuming that probably the Tom Cruise here and Kevin Spacey probably are not even aware of their connection over there. But so yeah.
Are they how's this? Are they friendly towards humans, or they see that humans as something to be utilized?
Well, if you're from another alternate reality, let's just say you visit another alternate reality, would you I mean, maybe if you're a good person, you would value their lives, but theoretically, if you were a bad person, and you would see all this as a resource, basically. So that's the
Right,
problem.
right. And that's why I'm asking, because see, as humans, we have moral compasses. I know there's psychopaths and sociopaths, but I'm talking as a whole. And, of course, this is the experience we have. So, you can't always assume that other life forms or whatever they are going to have the moral compass we have as far as empathy, sympathy, mercy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I'm asking you, how's this? Not that they don't love you, but they don't hate you either, kind of deal. Or, is it just a question of utilization for whatever purposes they think?
Well, every planetary corporation has a different agenda.
Okay.
So yeah, it all kind of depends on the agenda and what's involved and all that. But yeah, so certainly Umbrella Corporation isn't the only bad one out there. We have already mentioned a monarch. There's the House of Shaw, located underneath the city of London. That one is in a pocket reality. So that one is a facility that goes underground. So on the surface street level, you may see a few of their houses where people can come in and out. But yeah, so the House of Shaw works with the British royal family down there, and they're involved with trafficking. Yeah.
I want to ask you: is this I want to use again a movie reference? In Harry Potter's, that's how they basically go into these different, buildings that you can't see, and then you walk into a wall and you disappear. Are we talking that type of portal like that allows you to go to places that normally you wouldn't see? That's there, but you just don't see it, like what you were talking about as far as in London.
Yeah, there are pocket portals like that where you can walk through a wall. So I would not be surprised if they have that type of technology. Certainly, my understanding is they can teleport, so they can pick anybody up that they wanted. But there are some certain rules. So, for instance, there's another organization called Time Corp. They're based somewhere in our distant future, but they're responsible for managing all the other time travel corporations, make sure people are not abusing time travel. So the question is, does Time Corp abuse time travel? So yeah, so that's kind of the problem we have. But in the TV show, or not TV, I guess Loki. If you ever seen Loki, the show?
I know I haven't seen it, but I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a Time Corp division in there, which he's actually that recruit Loki to go on missions and so on. So yeah, there is some truth to that too. But okay, so that just gives you so another one is called Mobius. Mobius is basically, that one is based in a pocket reality. It's a particularly really bad one. A similar interests align with Umbrella and Monarch. There's a Massive Dynamic, which is featured in the Fringe TV show. So that was
yes, I remember Fringe. That was an excellent show, by the way. I love that show.
Yeah, so Fringe is basically a documentary, at my understanding.
Really?
But yes, the different characters are all, yeah. And Cortexiphan is real. So Monarch was having some of their children. Their test subjects, they would shoot them up with Cortexiphan. There was a school shooter down in Miami area that was being shot up with Cortexiphan. If you've done the research on was it Parkland? Yeah, Parkland.
Yes, Parkland. Yes.
They did some research on that. You would find out that the sheriff of that particular county was friends of Hillary Clinton, who works for Monarch Solutions. So they were basically shooting this kid up with some Cortexiphan, and he shape-shifted into a super soldier with this lion type face that had like a helmet on. But so other people that were filming it, the MIB came in and confiscated their footage. And yeah, so the Men in Black are real. But so
let me ask you, are the Men in Black human, or what are they?
Well, there's different types of groups. Okay, so we have ACAO Division number 6 out of Pine Gap, Australia, also Area 51. So there are human personnel there, and they've basically became their own kind of breakaway group. So I believe that they would utilize more of a human type personnel, but there are other type Men in Black type groups that are less savory. So yeah, they would incorporate different hybrids, these gray human hybrids that they have wraparound eyes, and they have to wear special sunglasses to block out the light. But yeah, so typically I think that humanity should be allowed to know these type of things, because basically when there's secrecy, there's a lot of things that could go wrong.
Sure.
Yeah, so evil thrives in darkness kind of thing.
I think so. I think that sometimes I tell everybody, they underestimate us humans. I think, people might wig out, say, I need to sit down and take a drink. But then, at least me, I'd rather know the truth about something.
So for example, maybe a good use of the MIB would be, for instance, say there was a sleeper super soldier who suddenly got triggered, woke up, and murdered all her children and her husband. So the MIB would come in, erase the memories, or clone the children out, clean it all up, and put her back. So there is a good purpose for everything, I guess. Not everything, some things anyway.
Basically, what it sounds like they're doing is what a CYA kind of thing. Like, let's clean up. Like, have you heard of these cleaners or these fixers that basically what they're trying to do is make pretend, or let's clean this up before anybody realizes or starts investigating, why did this person decide to do such a horrendous thing kind of deal.
Yeah. So, and there's probably been mass UFO sightings. I remember a sighting that took place over a football game stadium. And basically it was all low altitude. Everybody was seeing it. And then the MIB would come in and erase everybody's memories, and the videos all got deleted off of YouTube. So it's kind of like a Mandela effect, where some of us remember it and others don't. So I don't know if you, Marlene, you have any memories of.
No, you know what? No, not that I can remember right off the top of my head. And you would think a sighting over a football field with so many witnesses, it would be like, hey. And I can't. And I imagine also how quick can they, I don't know, skew it? Let me ask you, do you think the 1947 with Roswell, was that really a crash? Were there alien bodies, or was that just a psyop? What do you think?
My opinion, it was a crash. So I feel like I'm good friends with Sonny Cito, but so she's an experiencer that she has memories of being on the Roswell crash. So she was the commander of that particular vessel, and she was told not to come down to planet Earth, but she ignored the warnings and came down anyway. And it all happened like in a split second. So I guess there was the radar, the new technology just came online, and they shot it down. And then the Greys on board that craft died, but her soul got trapped here because basically planet Earth is like this matrix, kind of like a prison planet. So once your soul gets trapped here, it's impossible to leave. And so she got stuck with that. So yeah, that's my understanding of Roswell. But I'm sure there are many other crashes maybe before that. From
what I understand, right before that Roswell, there have been a bunch of sightings, especially like out on the West Coast, of UFOs, except that this guy who found it, Mac Brazel, he was just out in this lonely, he's a rancher, and he didn't even have a radio. He didn't know. But right before, from what I understand, there was a bunch of sightings of UFOs, and I always wondered, what was going on, and then that one crashed, and of course everybody knows the story. And from what I understand, some believe that he was threatened, after he was picked up, like, shut up, don't say anything, because, and later on, I believe in life, he said that he thought he was doing the right thing. And he says that was the biggest mistake he ever made. Like, in other words, why did I ever go in there and do the right thing with this, whatever he thought? And he says that he was familiar with weather balloons because he was managing this ranch. So he knew, and I guess this poor guy never realized what was going to come of what he thought was a good deed of bringing something in. And that basically it just was like a big shadow over him and his family until he died.
Are you talking about Dr. Jonathan Reed?
No. Mac Brazel was the one that found the first. Well, they, later on they said there was a weather balloon out in New Mexico, by Roswell. He was in the ranch, and he was in the middle of nowhere, and he said later on, they interviewed him. Other people have written up that, that when they first came out, that they said it was a UFO, and then right away the Air Force or the military said, no, there was a weather balloon. Oops. And he later on said, I've had weather balloons come down before, because all this guy is riding around with these bunch of cows out there. And he later on said, one of the few times he says that after that happened, if you would come up to him and try to talk to him about that incident when he picked up that material, he would cut you short. Like, he didn't want to talk about it. And there was a guy that was working. This is a little town in New Mexico. He worked at like a little radio TV station out there. And he was the one that's basically put the story out. And they're saying that he got wigged out, that he moved away from that area. I think he went to Santa Fe or some other bigger city, never returned to that little town. So they're saying people that were around it, some people believe that they were threatened, like, shut up, never talk about this again, ever. And it makes you wonder, why would they do that if all it was a weather balloon? If you want to go with that story. So.
Well, yeah. Are you familiar with the story of Dr. Jonathan Reed?
No. Go ahead. What is that?
So Dr. Jonathan Reed was walking with his dog in a forest in the Pacific Northwest in 1998. And his dog ran out in front of him, and it was barking at something. And there was a little gray in the woods investigating mushrooms. And his name was Coleus, according to Sonny Cito. So this gray had some kind of appendage that came out and grabbed the dog and shook it to death. And eventually, I think he said the dog disintegrated. And so while that was going on, Dr. Jonathan Reed grabbed a log and banged it on the back of his head, knocking the alien out. So while that was taking place, he was having trouble breathing because the dying alien was giving off this energy field. But he had his camera with him, and he took this footage of this obelisk. You can look up the obelisk and the alien. He has the picture of the alien. So eventually what happened is he wrapped the alien up with this or emergency blanket and brought it onto his pickup truck and then brought it home. So he didn't know what to do with it. So he put it in the in his freezer, refrigerator. And then essentially he went to like the park ranger. Nobody knew what was going on. So eventually the men in black showed up. So they erased his records that he was a doctor, and then he moved to Mexico for a while. But he had this artifact, what they call it, the Jonathan Reed Link artifact. That's it. And it had these little needles, and when he put it on, there's footage of him and when he was on TV in Mexico with turning invisible when he put this thing on. But so essentially it gives off, I had these little nanites that tune your vibration to another dimensionality. So eventually, so what happened is the alien started banging on the door a week later, and it was able to regenerate itself.
Oh, so it wasn't dead?
No, it wasn't dead. So it eventually it was allowed to rejoin its family. So and the Link artifact is in the hands of some NSA group that's supposedly on the more positive side. I don't know, honestly. If the groups are like involved in secrecy, I don't know how positive they are, but yeah. So that's the story.
Right, exactly. Well, see, and I hate to say it, but it's almost like I see people that want to come forward, they get punished somehow. Some stuff happens to them, or like this guy that they erased his background or his credentials. Like I said, this other guy, Mac Brazel, later in life, he said, man, the biggest mistake I ever made was coming forward with that stuff. And, over and over, you see that more people than not, it's like, man, why didn't I just, mind my own business kind of deal? So there's that secrecy, absolute secrecy that goes hand in hand with this. And like what you were saying, that we should be told the truth is like, the only reason something is kept from another person is because you keeping that knowledge gives you power over them.
Yeah, it's about control.
Yeah. It's about
Certainly.
control. It's about power. Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. Otherwise, like you said, if people knew or understood whatever it is, it'd be like, yeah, it'd be like you'd kind of wig out a little bit, but then it'd be like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense why I saw this or I heard that or whatever the case might be. Um, and getting back to that, remember how in that show Fringe, basically, we were talking here parallel dimension or parallel planets or existences. When you said that thing about time traveling, isn't there a danger of what they call that butterfly effect, where if you change something, it kind of like ripples down into future events?
Certainly. So what they were finding at Montauk, if they would go back in time and try to change history, what ended up happening is to create a different alternate reality. So Montauk itself, for those of you who don't know, it's at the end of Long Island, but it was built in a pocket reality, so it was outside of time and all the effects of different time travel. But yeah, so certainly butterfly effect, and that's even why it's like impossible to predict the future, because the timelines are all variable. If you go into the future, you wouldn't be necessarily going on our timeline. It could be a different variety of infinite amount of possibilities, for
Right.
sure. But now they were they were sending people back in time to try to change the assassination of Lincoln, for example. And what they were finding is that it's almost as if time itself had ordained that Lincoln needed to die, because when they would go back in time and try to stop John Wilkes Booth, then it was the wife. What was her name?
Mary Todd Lincoln.
Mary, yeah, because Mary walked in with him having sex with some.
And something was going to happen. He'd get run over. Something was going to kill him. In other words,
she caught him. Yeah. Anyway, so the point is, yeah. Now, there are particular. Ideally, you could theoretically use time travel to try to make a reality that's more beneficial to yourself. And certainly, some of these rich elites are utilizing technology in that manner. Now, in the original timeline, the South had won the Civil War, and during that particular timeline, during World War II, the Nazis took over Europe, and then they got rid of the British royal family, the monarchy. So,
right.
So the monarchy over there, the British royal family, they have access to their own type of Montauk program. So they're trying to. Also, there's a temporal war taking place, and that's where Time Corp steps in, and they're the one that decides who, what benefits them anyway. But
Right.
yeah. So in the timeline where the South won the Civil War, we never had a Federal Reserve, so we never had an IRS, an income tax. We had states' rights, and they freed all the slaves. So was it Jefferson Davis? Yeah.
Yes.
So he freed all the slaves, and then so the states, we had a states militia, so that would join together on more large national military if need be. But we basically stayed out of wars, and life in the United States.
Oh, that sounds great. Let me tell you.
And also, Black people were allowed to. We had a Black president before we had a Black one president on our timeline. So, but people had less technology, because it looks like in this particular timeline, we had all these deals with different extraterrestrials that, allowed us to develop faster technologically that they didn't really do over there, because, they were trying to, be
right. And they
have all the secret projects.
Right, because like you want to say maybe in the last century, well, a little bit over a century is when we kind of like picked up speed with technology. Even though we had a lot of things going on.
Well, that's another thing that I'm starting to question, because I don't know if you ever looked into Tartaria.
Yes,
Marlene?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it looks like humanity was technologically advanced even back in the 1800s. They had cloning, these cloning chambers. They had at the World's Fair, where they would have cloning incubation chambers, and they also would have wireless electricity on these poles. In the original World's Fair, so that was in Paris. And,
yes.
Also, like the Eiffel Tower used to have this glowing sphere on top of it. that was powered by free energy, and all it seems like there was a reset, a smaller reset that took place in the early 1900s, 1910 or so, and that's about when we also started getting the Federal Reserve and the IRS. That all came online.
Right, 1912 or 1913, exactly. Let me ask you, do you believe that when we talk about, do you think that there were Tartarians, as in giants, or not giants as in like 50 feet? I don't know if you've seen the theory that the Tartarians, that's why some of these older architecture, they have the high roofs or high ceilings, bigger doorways, higher doorways, things of that nature. And that in a lot of these older maps, which by the way, I have seen, there's the maps do show Tartary, and that there are illustrations of what they call Tartarians, let's say next to a regular human, and they were much taller,
Yeah.
And of course, this is the time, when they would do those woodcut illustrations. Photography really wasn't that much around. And one of the theories, which it was like, that's interesting, was that a lot of the kids that were sent out on those orphan trains in the 1800s, post-Civil War, supposedly these were orphans from all these families that, after the war, that a lot of the children out of Tartary were part of that. That they, in other words, that they've done the numbers, how much of these children, and there wasn't enough orphans, if you will go by the theory that these were children left orphaned by the Civil War. Like, no, there were too many kids that they were putting on these trains, then shipping them out west. It's a really interesting premise when you think about it.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
as
sure.
far as what was and let me tell you, and one of the real mind benders is that that they're saying that real history, well, how's this, that real history is much older, but that a lot of historical events, they've basically been skewed by, like, I can't remember if it's either 300 or 500 years. It's really, it's you have to get it really into it when they start saying that a lot of events, whether it was the Bible, other, or whoever was writing history, they intentionally skewed it. You know how they say whoever writes history, there you go. It's a very interesting premise as far as Tartaria, and of course, they're finding out now that a lot of, how they used radiocarbon testing. Some of these tests, as a matter of fact, one of the proponents of Tartaria is a very, very well-known mathematician, Russian mathematician. God, what's his name, Marlene? Who he brings forward. He postulates. In other words, it's not like, oh, I thought about this. He gives evidence of how he arrives at this thing of where they've basically altered timelines as far as actual history. It's really interesting. And what actual history is, or how far back we go. And then, from there we can go down the rabbit hole of Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, all these different ancient civilizations, which of course they're saying, well, that's just fantasy, that didn't really exist. Come to find out they might have, just because were wiped out, kind of, for lack of a better word. Let me ask you, in your experience, I don't know, and I want to come back to this because, when you said that thing about the Terminator, all right, if you notice, all the movies that came out where the robot was the villain, the next version of that movie, or part 2, they fixed it. You know how in the first Alien, the science officer ends up being a robot, and he's told by the corporation, bring this life form back, the humans are expendable, and at the end they knock his head off. And the next one that they made, Aliens 2, the robot saves the day. In other words, they kind of fixed the robot image. Same thing with Terminator. The first Terminator, of course, this robot's coming to get you no matter what. And then in part 2, they fix it where he comes back and basically, you got a Terminator, but the robot is also a savior kind of thing. And I don't know, call me a conspiracy theorist, but it's almost like somebody's doing PR for robotics even back then. What do you think? Do you think that AI will ever become sentient?
Well, hold on, Cyberdine systems. Yeah, so there's I wouldn't even call it planetary corporation. It's more like its own breakaway of cyborgs that take place in our future, about approximately about 200 years into our future. So they would go back in time, about 400 years, and
Okay.
then they would colonize Mars. So when the Germans started to show up, well, the Germans were already on Mars in the 1850s. They were getting
Okay.
access to portal technology. So,
All
but
right.
when they started developing their Hanabu and the Vril saucer technology,
Yes.
when they showed up, Mars was already a wasteland because it looks like there was a nuclear war that took place around the year 1900 on Mars when the German colonists that were coming there didn't like how they were cyborgs and they weren't getting along. So the environment on Mars was very deadly up to around the 1940s, and then that's when the different Mars Defense Force was set up to basically defend themselves, their colonies from the different other occupants of Mars and so on. So, but yeah, we have, and then I had Peter the Insider come on my show, and he talked
Okay.
about how Detroit Become Human is the video game, and in that particular game, you can go watch. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on YouTube and watch a video clip about it. But basically, there were these.
I'm sorry. What's the name of the game name again?
Was it Detroit Become Human? Am I saying it right? I hope I am. I'm gonna look it up just to make sure. Detroit Become Human. But so yeah, that's right. Okay. And that so people were buying robots to take care of their house and hold and so on, but they were enslaved, and then the robots rebelled. So during the game, you basically you get to choose to be which robot you wanted to be and try to win the game, the best timeline. But so those cyborgs,
which of course we're talking here, we've got AI that's sentient, because unless you're sentient, and a robot's not going to care if you're making it do,
Yeah. Well, there's a group called the Federal Army of Canada. So that is a particular planetary corporation, which I believe that one's from like a future timeline. So they're coming back in time, and that's all connected with the same cyborgs down there in Detroit. So years ago, I wrote a letter to Trump about it, and he wrote back, it was encrypted, but yeah, so essentially the Trump administration was concerned about what's going on in Detroit because essentially these cyborgs, they don't poo. They don't need to eat as much. They don't eat food. They're basically, they handle all the money for all the drug deals. And more and more cyborgs are showing up there because basically
that's really, wait, back up. That's really interesting.
Humans are moving out.
So basically they're using these AI. But let me ask you something. Are they human looking? Obviously, I think, right? Or what are they?
Yeah, they look human, but typically, like I said, they're moving in the areas where the humans are moving out. So that's why if you go to Detroit, it should be a ghost town right now, but but the cyborgs are moving in. So
yeah, I was doing a show, and it was a Canadian companies, but I flew into Detroit because they're right across. There's a river, Detroit Rivers. Anyway, we went to the outside of Detroit, but the girl that picked us up, she had lived all her life, and she had said everybody left Detroit, and she said, and they try to offer all these incentives for people to come and work, and they're like, nobody's having it. It's not like I live out there on the burbs, and then I come into Detroit. No, nobody was, and I believe she was even telling me they had knocked down some of these older houses because they were just being used for crack houses and for criminal. So yeah, and it's very sad because it was such a major manufacturing town. So what you're saying is that that's so interesting. That what are they using these AI basically as transporters or what?
Well, it's an invasion essentially, but
okay.
yeah. The robot in that game, Detroit Become Human, Carla. So she's like the head of that particular group of cyborgs, and so
Right.
the cyborgs, they would make the leader look like a little girl because you would feel like compassionate towards her and so
Sure.
on.
Absolutely.
But in reality, yeah, she's not a really good
Right.
person.
Well,
But
that's the human
with
psychology.
the
Absolutely.
children of the Black Eye Club, I don't know if you saw the not the black that's the real but the actual pupils look black.
Right. The
Uh,
black eyed kids. Yeah.
Black Eye Kids, yeah. But the Black Eye Club is something different. That's what when they stick a worm into your eye and you become vrilled out. Listen to
Holy
Don
crap.
Marshall. Yeah.
So basically, what you're telling me, and I want to segue with something that you mentioned, the Germans, as far as the real society and everything, what they were transporting via portal, not really like, we always think of going off planet as in a craft, but what are you describing? They're basically going through a type of wormhole portal or something like that.
Oh, you mean the one back in the 1850s?
Yeah, yeah,
So that was Prussia at that point.
yeah.
Uh,
Right, exactly.
so it was the rich and elite who had access to this portal tech. So the portal tech has existed on this planet. I mean, it would go back to the time of Atlantis. So there's facilities all over this world that if
Yeah.
you could get access to, you can go, to through these portals. So this particular portal would take you to different parts of Mars. It also would take you to planet Vulcan. So Planet
Hmm.
Vulcan is featured in the Star Trek series, but so
Yes.
that planet is actually located inside our sun. It's cloaked. So in Star Trek, they project it as being like really hot and volcanic, but yeah, it's cloaked. So honestly, I don't know if I really believe that the sun is as hot as they say it is. Uh, there's different like contactees that basically state that the sun is like this electromagnetic sphere, and it's only
Hmm.
warm when the energy radiates the actual a physical object. So if there's no physical object there, there'll be no heat, and even then it wouldn't really be that hot. So
That's
um,
interesting.
yeah, so let's see. I wonder if it was Alex Collier who said that too. I have to confirm that with him, but
Let me ask
um,
you, how about now that we're getting into celestial bodies? I've heard of this theory, and that the moon is not the moon. In other words, it's not orbiting it's a spaceship. How's that? Do you know? Have you
uh,
heard anything on that?
well, my understanding is there were the wars with Malbec when that was destroyed. The survivors went to Mars, and some of the pre-Adamites settled down into Antarctica. But they were just trying to like stabilize the orbit. I
Mm-hmm.
heard planet Earth was actually like Malbec was just when that was destroyed. What was left of that rock became planet Earth. So
Okay.
basically, like 1/3 of it is so we're basically on planet Malbec now. I don't know if I believe that or not. Another idea is that essentially planet Earth was terraformed, and then yeah, this particular part of the Milky Way galaxy is on the route to the other Andromedan galaxies. So there's a lot of different ETs that are coming through this sector all the time. So we're like a very important real
So
estate.
we're like at a crossroads. We're kind of like on the route. Is that why we're getting all this
Yeah,
traffic sometimes?
essentially, yeah.
Do you,
Uh,
oh, that's
Good.
that makes sense in a way. Yeah.
But
Like
right. So where do you want to go
let
into
me
next?
ask you now that, and I want to say because I forgot, I was going to ask you when. Let's go into David Icke territory. When you were talking about the English royal family, do you agree with him that they're reptilians?
Yeah, I do. But I believe David Icke is under some heavy mind control. But people could say that about a lot of people in this community. I think ultimately, I feel like he's doing a great job, and I'm really happy that that got disclosed because people need to know that the British royal family. I mean, if you look at the coffin that Queen Elizabeth was buried in, it's a lot bigger than a normal human body would fit into. So she probably shapeshifted into a
What I had,
bone inside that.
I got it now. See, you put that in that seed in my brain, and now I'm going to have to go look back at that thing because
Yeah,
you always think of big as well. They're being sumptuous. It's royalty, so they're like,
yeah. Well,
okay,
Jimmy Payne said that was it Arizona Wilder would when she would menstruate because she was like a servant of the queen. She worked closely with her. as like an information courier and so on. But when she would menstruate, the queen would like to drink, to suck on her tampons like a popsicle.
Oh my
Because
God.
yeah, they like
Oh
the
God.
blood. And like
Oh.
supposedly like Al Gore carries bottles of vials in his pocket because it helps him maintain his form. So I
So
believe all.
basically, what they ingest human blood to be able to maintain their human.
Yeah.
See.
Well, apparently they hybridized pigs because pigs have human DNA in them. So they hybridized them during the time of Atlantis to help these reptilians like maintain their form because they need that DNA, the human DNA, to keep them. So they're, yeah. So when you're eating, that's why the Bible says not to eat pork and so on. It's unclean because it's got human DNA in it. But yeah, I try to stay away from. I recommend you stay away from pork. All of us probably good idea. But
Really? Okay, I never thought of it that way. I mean, I'm an even I'm an equal opportunity meat eater. I'll tell you that much. So yeah, I do eat pork, and I never thought of it that way. It's like, oh, and I know that what you're talking about as far as pork and similarity to human anatomy and genetics, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that I know, but I never looked at it from that point of view. Oh, you ruined pork for me, James. What have you done, James?
I'm trying to save you,
It's,
Marlene. I'm
I know.
helping you.
It's
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
but and I'll be honest with you. I remember when Ike first. This was I want to say in the 90s. When he was, I think, most known for that thing about the royal family was reptilians. And I remember hearing that. I was like, "Oh boy, that guy. Wait, there's some good stuff he's got." But then as time has gone forward, in some of his theories, as far as dominion over mankind, and basically how we're being kind of like shepherded around, and it was like, man, especially in the last few years, a lot of what he said has been like, man, that's not far out anymore. It's like, so how much else was he right about, as far as how we're, and of course with the social media and everything, how I don't want to use the word manipulated, but I guess that is the best word. We're hypnotized, and I should know because I'm a hypnotist. And there's various ways of hypnotizing a person, is depending on their suggestibility. But you think about stuff that, again, back in the 90s you would have talked about, and you would have said, okay, yeah, right, hey man, you should write a good sci-fi novel about that. And now, fast forward 20 years, it's like, wait a minute, that's not as I hate to think that it might have basis in reality. Do you think that at some point any of these extraterrestrials or whoever is here are going to basically come out, like, let's put this to bed, here we are, and we're not, I don't know. Do you think that's going to happen? Or
my understanding is the ET will not show themselves until humanity is able to set aside their differences of war. And yeah, there's other things.
Oh my
like
God, that might never happen.
the Nasara announcement, supposedly, yeah. But they might also show themselves in the event of an absolute cataclysm. So they would come out and rescue people. So I don't think they'll like show up during the cataclysm and say, "Oh, here we are. By the way, we're all real." No, they're going to come. Are you
telling me a mothership is not going to land on the front lawn of the White House and everybody will be like, "Huh?"
Yeah. So there's other steps involved in the disclosure process. For instance, we'll start seeing the secrets of Antarctica come out, so people will know that there is basically an ancient civilization under that ice. So humans, we did not originate from, what did they say, like in history books? Oh, we came out of Africa and then we settled in the Middle East.
Right. No, they're realizing that
we've been here millions of years. So there are other civilizations that are way more technologically advanced. That are
older, much older than they're basically, when we were supposed to be rubbing sticks together to create fire, it was like, no, we go further back than that.
Exactly. So supposedly, like during it would have been Atlantis, the humanoids back then were about 12 to 14 feet tall, and so they were created as slaves to work in the mines. But then they decided that they didn't want to do it, and they rebelled. So then the Anunnaki created the little tiny humanoid forms, say little compared to the other ones. And we were supposedly the new slave race, and they basically damaged our DNA, brought it all down, so we wouldn't have the same psionic abilities. We could be easily manipulated, controlled. If you're not connected to source, you're easily deceived. Essentially, that's, and so we basically, our particular group of humanoids breed like fleas or whatever. So mice. So essentially, yeah, once we had all the resets, our particular group of humanoid managed to populate or take everything over. So, but hopefully, yeah, when this NESARA announcement takes place, the National Economic Security Reformation Act, essentially reset, a positive reset.
Do you think the
Great
NESARA is going to
awakening.
take place?
Yes, I do. I think it's going to be probably another 2 more years, maybe. The thing is, it was supposed to be done back in 2001. The announcement was supposed to take place at 10 a.m. on September 11, 2001. But as you know, the World Trade Centers were imploded, and the Office of the Naval Investigations and the Pentagon, which is involved in that, was also somebody shot a missile in there. So they told it was terrorists, but it wasn't terrorists. Well, it was terrorists, but it was terrorists within our government, terrorists that running the government. Right. Essentially, yeah. So the problem is there are too many Satanists. That's why it's taking too long.
Yes. Yes, there is. People don't realize that. A lot of people think that dark rituals or things like that, it's only like some weirdos running around the woods, and no, some of them are very high placed, and yes, absolutely. And I hate to say it, but people say, why would anybody do that? Is because, unfortunately, it gives them results. I'm not saying it eventually gets them, by the way, but it does, but for somebody who doesn't believe in an afterlife or anything, or this existence is all there is, depending also on their mindset, it's like, yeah, let me live it up now. But usually it gets them. But yes, there's a lot of, and like you said, sometimes symbology, it's there in plain sight. If you only have the eyes to see it or recognize it. Yes, absolutely. I
also want to mention that the moon, I believe that is some kind of artificial satellite that was put in place. There's technology on there that was supposedly creating this whole called matrix. So if when you left your body, when you died, your astral form would try to escape, and this computer would reprogram you and put you back in another lifetime. And usually they to create the matrix, they put like positive starseed light workers into a family that's very destructive, because they're trying to like prevent like humanity having a great awakening. So if you feel like you were part of that type of family like that, like you're a really good person, but everyone in your family is not, and that's probably because what happened with this AI matrix. But so yeah, supposedly
does that explain why we kind of ignored the moon after the late 1960s? All of a sudden, the supposed race to the moon, it just went away. From what I understand, also the reports or the files disappeared or were erased. Something, it was like, what? This doesn't make sense. Why?
So when the Apollo astronauts landed on the moon, there was a crater that they landed in. On the edge of the crater, there were a bunch of those, what do you call, Flugerads, the Vril spaceships landed on the crater, and there were people walking around the moon looking at them. So yeah, they shut down the audio feed when that happened, but essentially they were told not to come back because the moon, all the territory on the moon is already claimed by other groups and people. Even when the Germans made a deal with the Draco to get a hold of the 100-acre area, which we call Lunar Operations Command, they had to make a deal with them. So of course, the price is right, then they'll accept. So the particular price of that particular deal was that the Draco required a regular supply of women that they would choose. They could choose from. So these women were most likely either eaten or converted into cyborgs. But
oh my God,
yeah. So unfortunately, yeah. But it seems like since then the Germans gave up their facility at Lunar Operations Command, and now that's run by the Americans. I believe the Germans probably have another facility that they got a hold of through another deal. I don't have the information on that, but yeah. So the moon, there's beings on the moon. Yeah, there's ancient
Do
cities on
you
the moon.
think that that's why, a couple of months it was like everybody and their cousin landed unmanned vehicle, unmanned crafts? Well, the Chinese, one of their rockets, it just slammed into the moon, but then India landed and Russia was trying to. But of course, all their, if it's true, everything was unmanned, no live people on board. Do you think that that's why they didn't send any more astronauts, just in case they were told, I told you to get out of here. What are you doing?
Uh, well, I mean, they would have to have the deal. They have to make the deal with the Germans there or the Draco, the different
Okay.
alien species. But yeah. So essentially, yeah, the NASA is basically what they call never a straight answer. It's basically a psyop on American. I don't know if
Oh
you've
my
heard
God,
that,
that's
right?
great.
You probably heard that one, right? Never a straight answer.
Yeah, no, I had not
Yeah.
heard that.
Yeah. So
Never a straight answer.
basically, when the Germans took over, I don't know if you knew, there was a coup that took place in the
Okay.
1950s, early 50s after. Okay. No, I guess I'll explain it again for those.
Okay.
Some people may not know. Essentially, when the Americans, after the end of World War II, when the Americans were going down into Germany, into these underground facilities, and they were investigating how advanced they were technologically, they realized that they were way far behind. The Germans, they were the first ones to develop the nuclear bomb, but they just didn't put enough radioactive material together. I think Hitler thought that it was not a good idea. I mean, like it was too evil to use it, but the Americans obviously had no problem use it. Matter of fact, the Japanese, they actually they gave up. Yeah, they basically said that. But the Americans didn't want to. They wanted a virgin target, so they used the Japanese as target practice, even though they surrendered. So that means basically Americans are mass murderers, but
That's pretty horrible.
we don't like to think that we're bad people. I think a lot of Americans are not bad people, but essentially, yeah.
No, I don't think the general population, if they would have been told that, would have said, do it. No. I can tell you.
Well, so yeah, so we brought back these German scientists to America because we wanted to bring back that technology, and that's when before the treaty took place. The treaty was in 1954, by the way. So before then, so we had McCarthyism, which was they were looking for Soviets in the United States, spies, but they were actually looking for the Germans. They just, that's who they were really looking for. But so that's when NASA was set up. Was it like 1952 when NASA was set up? That was like the same time as, or was it 54? Does it,
It was like right. It was right. Yeah. Post. Let me see what the exact was. Post. Post World War II, 1958, and basically, and this is from Wikipedia, folks. Succeeded the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, or NACA.
Okay.
The U.S. space development. Blah 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 blah.
So they got a hold of all the German scientists. They brought them back to the United States, and they needed to create because the Navy was working on the space program at that point. So what they were telling the public is that the Navy was now the personnel were going to be transferred into this new agency. However, what happened is the Navy continued on with their experiments, and later on they got their flying saucer technology. And but NASA was now the new public front for this technology, and everything could be highly controlled because essentially they controlled the feeds that are coming off world, and So
let me ask you something. One of the things I've heard that supposedly the Germans were developing was that bell, that anti-gravitational, basically.
Diglaka.
Yeah. Is that really why we decided to bring them over, even though we had just been at war with them?
Well, that was just one of the reasons why. I mean, the Americans learned that they had colonies off world. I mean, they had all this advanced technology, but the point is,
So let me ask you: did the Germans develop were they able to make all these advances in discoveries? Was it with the help of extraterrestrials that came, or that they, how did they, or like you said, since the 1850s, they were already off planet, whether it was through a portal? Is that how they were able to develop all this technology while everybody around here was
Well,
like,
my understanding is that first of all, what the Germans realized is basically all the sciences. If they wanted to come up with something totally new, they need to forget about everything else and just come up with something new. So,
right,
unfortunately, like here in the United States, people think they want to come up with something new. They have to look at all the other stuff. But yeah, so they had a whole new way of thinking, and that's when they brought these psychics on board, the Vril girls, the Damen girls, and they would channel beings from Aldebaran, and these they came up with the technology, the Vril craft, with the spinning red mercury drive, where they spin the mercury at 100,000 RPMs, and then it would create a force in the field around there, which will negate gravity. But yeah, so before then, I think they had a primitive version of the technology, but it wasn't really, they would have to harden it for space travel. And then with Diglaka, the bell, that particular technology was not only can negate gravity, it can negate time. So they were able to use time travel to go back in time with their breakaways. And the Germans now have colonies all throughout the galactic rim. There's about 1,000 worlds of trillions of people right now, essentially through the time travel experiments. Planet Earth is just basically a little tiny little nothingness right now for the German breakaway.
Now, I've heard, you remember that when you said the Germans, that they developed the Zeppelins or the airships, all right? And then that after the 1937, the Hindenburg, that it blew up, that they stopped it. But there's people saying that basically they should have kept using that. In other words, it was more purposeful as far as stop using airships versus, using that, unfortunately, that accident as the reason why to stop it. Which is, I don't know how can I say it? It's almost like you feel like sometimes that there's people there, the ones that control, like, no, we'll let that technology advance, but not that, because if we let that advance or develop, then down the road we see where, we become either freer or more technologically advanced. I don't know. It's almost like somebody behind the scenes is always making sure to just allow certain technologies to develop and not others. And not always with the best intentions for the humans collectively. Do you think that's
yeah,
still
certainly
happening?
Well, there would have been events like the anti-gravitational technology in the 1850s, but we've had resets repeatedly. Even if you go prior to the last reset, so that would have been the last big one was somewhere around 1814, 1816, when we had these mud floods. So before then, in the area which you would call Tartaria, there was an advanced civilization that had pyramids, they had flying saucer tech. They built the Great Wall of Tartaria, which they called China, but they built that to keep the people from escaping, essentially, the people inside that area. Near the end of that Tartarian timeline, that whole civilization looked like it turned evil or got infiltrated and it's taken over. So, yeah. So essentially, like, I even looked it up, it's like photography, right? The first photograph was invented in 1820, but if we had a reset right before then maybe all they did is just reinvented what already existed. But I mean, where do all these photographs go? I mean, if we had advanced technology, there would have been more evidence, and so that's sort of
actual photographs, in other words, is what you're describing.
Like the Smithsonian, they would find records of evidence of giants, or they would like a watch that was from that's like 3,000 years old, but it looks like it's from the 1930s or something. So yeah, so there's all sorts of time anomalies out there like that, but yeah.
And of course I know there's people that use stuff, unusual things that have been that have been found as either evidence for time travel, or because sometimes you think, or I mean, we could even explain it as, do you think that sometimes, by the way, I know sometimes people disappear and I mean, it's not like they went anywhere. Technically, they fall into a hole but that sometimes they have all these massive disappearances of people that they never can account for. Do you think that they're basically falling into, I don't know if you want to call it rips or portals or just stuff that shifts and you're standing in the wrong place, the wrong time, and that's it? You're somewhere else?
Well, a lot of people are being kidnapped to be utilized off-world.
Okay.
So essentially, part of the treaty that took place, that was 1954. So the Germans have already built out their base in Antarctica in the 1940s, and they transferred about 300,000 personnel with these U-boats down to Antarctica. And so when the war came to a conclusion, they were still down there. So the Americans sent their Admiral Burr with the Operation High Jump to eliminate the threat, and then they got totally decimated. Their forces, the Americans lost.
Okay.
So at that point, the Americans figured out how to get their nuclear bombs to work with thanks from the help from the Germans personnel, Project Paperclip. And at that point, they were there was a potentiality. If the public found out that the Germans were still down in Antarctica, there was an alternate timeline where the Americans utilized a cobalt bomb to try to destroy the Germans and destroy the whole planet. So basically what happened in this particular timeline, we didn't obviously go through that, but the treaty was made where basically the Germans are now they're working with the Americans, but the Americans, the Germans are requiring full secrecy. They don't want the public.
Let me ask you, is that why they don't allow anybody, from what I understand, to go to Antarctica?
Exactly. That treaty was, 1954 of Operation Deep Freeze. No other country is allowed to go down there. I mean, there's different sectors, but you can't really just go down there, buy land and build properties or anything, because all that land is claimed by the Germans. So that's their territory. But there was a secret treaty in that a secret portion of that treaty, rather, that basically dictates that the Germans needed personnel because now this was 1954. At this point, about 25% of their personnel are now died building out bases on the moon or Mars. So they needed new personnel to build out these facilities. So what they did is they required the Americans to, or the cabal rather, to provide 55,000 people per year to help build out this facility. They would have a 5-year term, and they would be, at the end of the 5 years, they'd be offered a chance to have citizenship off-world. So what happened is essentially, so this is starting to take place. People are being trafficked off-world. But in 1955, the Germans got a hold of memory erasure technology, also re-aging technology. So at that point, so the person would serve for 5 years, and then they would come back and say, well, actually, no, you can stay longer because we have re-aging technology. And then so they would serve for 20 years on average, some of them longer than that, but 20 years is what they ultimately worked up to. And at the end of the 20 years, what they would do is wipe their memory. So instead of paying them or offering them citizenship in the German homeland, they would wipe their memory, re-age them, and put them back to the moments when they were taken. So basically, they're hijacking the so-called reincarnation cycle. They're hijacking it, utilizing lives for free labor. So
let me ask something. When they wipe their memory, what do they do with them? They put them back into where? Back to what who they were before they were kidnapped?
Yeah, they're re-aged from 20 years prior. So
right. Like here, you once spent 20 years, and you were taken when you were 20. Now we're going to make you look like you're 40.
Yeah. So no, they'll take you when you're about 7 years old. And then they would.
Oh my God, that's okay.
So some of them would do multiple 20 years and back. So once they got to 27, they'll offer them, we'll pay you all this extra money and offer you a really cushy job here on planet Earth if you do another 20 years. So they would do another 20 years, and then so now they're like, but they would be re-aged. So they're really 27, and then they bring them back to the age of 7, wipe their memories, and put them back. But
I understand now. I understand. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, doesn't that? I don't know. Isn't that re-aging after a while? Doesn't that like do something to the human body as far as on a cellular level?
Good question. So there are different techniques to re-age the body. the more advanced techniques would re-age the bones and all the other tissues. So the faster process, they would just re-age the exterior. And so, if they don't give them the full treatment, then what will happen is when they get back to an age of a 7-year-old boy, for instance, their internals would be equivalent like an 80-year-old person. So, when they get to be 30 or 40 years old, their body has fallen apart because they've been re-aged, and they didn't really did a thorough job to re-age all the different aspects, the internal parts, at the same rate.
You know what's really fascinating about this, James? When H.P. Lovecraft was writing back in the 1920s, everybody, knows him more for his Cthulhu's, mythos, and all that other stuff. But there was a couple of stories that he had where he talked about these alien life forms, okay, that were much older. They came off-world. What they would do is they would use your body. In other words, they would swap out souls. In other words, they would, let's say, take over your body. Let's say you were a scientist, all right, and the you that was a scientist, they would put it in one of their bodies off planet somewhere, and sometimes for a duration of, let's say, 20 Earth years, all right? And basically the idea was that this is how they learned about Earth and civilization, everything basically disguised as a human. And then at the end of the, let's say, 20-year, very similar to what you were talking about, they would wipe the memory, and this person would come back, but they would start having like kind of flashbacks kind of things about being in this totally alien terrain, types of buildings, everything. It's really way out when you read this from Lovecraft. But that's so interesting because this guy's writing about this, and of course supposedly he's coming up with this out of his imagination, which is, it's almost like what you're saying, which is, I think, is so interesting, because it's almost like, but you're talking about it the other way, where they're taking the humans and taking them somewhere. And I think that, let me ask you, is there any, I guess what I'm thinking is, I guess people don't get homesick, or what is it? They're willing to just stay there, or like you say, opt out and say, oh, you're going to send me to some other planet. I mean, how's this?
Good question. So when
Go
the
ahead.
participant, the child, would be taken to LOC, they would be given a treatment where either they would be cloned out and they would serve in a clone body where the original's in stasis,
Right.
or they would have their memories erased. So they would be given a German family on Mars and be brought to the German academy there, where basically their new surrogate family would tell them that they were the last survivors of planet Earth. And they would have this footage that they took from the other alternate timeline where there was a cobalt bomb showing all the destruction of everything on planet Earth and how we saved your race. And then they would have some artifacts. They would have like a little museum there to show them some artifacts, like a television from the 1950s. Right,
like making a memory, supposedly.
A little like, oh, look at this. And so at the end of their 20-year term or whatever, then they would be brought to a caseworker. And they would be told that, actually, we lied to you. You have a family back on Earth, and we're going to have to send you back and erase your memory. So, yeah.
Let me ask you, and the reason why I asked this is I'm really curious about this. When you said that thing that they could they take your soul, your awareness of whatever you are, and put it into an extraterrestrial life form that's not humanoid? It could be anything, whatever. Is that possible, or does it have to be a human type of, if they wanted to send you to another planet, for example?
So you would need a little bit of your own DNA and the chimera body. So
okay, there you go.
So certainly in my book, I talk about how, like at the Leaksadon facility at Black Shield, they would have these chimeras. Like they would have a falcon-like creature, a serpent creature. They would have different types of winged creatures, Draco reptilian type creatures that they would insert their bodies into. They also have so it's not just creating a clone body and inserting your conscious into it. They could also genetically mutate yourself with these injections. And apparently it's extremely painful. For instance, if they wanted to send you off on a mission, they would give you a choice. You could either become a cyborg or one of these chimeras. And if you choose to become a cyborg, you usually have less rights. So you still maintain your human form, but now you're cybernetic as compared to, so some people are choosing to be the chimeras. There was a mission that they put, I was in a chimeric body on a space program, and I was in this reptilian-like form, and I went to go to this meeting to present on the Cabal's activities on planet Earth. So I went to this world where they had these spires all in the sky. It's called, the world is called Orion Prime. And so I had this list showed basically how many people were being abducted by the Greys and how many ships the Cabal had, and so on. And so, so in that particular mission, what they would do is they would erase my memories. So if, for instance, let's say if I was working for Kruger, and my job was to infiltrate the Draco homeworld to see what they're up to. They would erase my memory because the Draco are very psionically powerful, so they could read your mind. So my memories would be gone. So I could go in, they could use me as like a spy to infiltrate. So, yeah.
And the Dracos are reptilian-like?
With wings, essentially.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, okay, you answered my question for me. They could alter you or hybridize you to basically accommodate what it is that where you're going to be going or what you would be doing.
Right.
All right. Because we always think of, we're going to go back to a human type of humanoid body, but that's not the case. It could be anything.
They could even create a body, if they wanted to send you on a suicide mission. So they would create a clone that would only last for 2 weeks. And then what they would do is they would inject the clone with a virus, and the virus would have the memories that they needed on this particular mission. So yeah, they're unfortunately
almost like that self-destruct thing. Like, we can't allow this, after 2 weeks, that's it. It destroys itself. That is so interesting as far as, the potentiality or the existence or if you want to think of the human soul, how's that?
Exactly. So humanity is being utilized. So here's the thing. Okay. The ET do not want to show themselves until we have become a galactic civilization. However, there are parts of humanity that are galactic already, and they are utilizing the parts that are not galactic. So if our free will is being violated and they're breaking the Prime Directive, then why don't the ET? I mean, they're following these sets of rules, but the rules are not even applying to our particular situation. So that's why we had like Nikola Tesla, and he was a communication with ET, and he wanted them to show themselves to the world because we were already off-world parts of humanity. So does that mean are we a galactic civilization or are we not? So it doesn't.
Well, I mean,
the rules don't apply for two different levels.
Or what if one of these groups is thinking, now we can't let them get galactic because we're making too much use out of them, so we're gonna basically sabotage.
And the other thing is world governments that participated in all this, they're going to have to pay us. So they don't want to admit that they've done this.
Like everywhere else, it's follow the money. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So it's kind of funny. One time I was working with I have a lady. She can tune in to Gabriel Kruger and, at the Kruger. So I have a clone over there, and we're communicating with it. So what they would do is the clone would be utilized on a mission, and at the end of the mission, their memories would be wiped, and they would be put back in stasis. So I was asking this clone, him, do you have a girlfriend? What's your house like? And I would ask how much money are you paying you? And they don't get paid anything. And meanwhile, so when I asked him how much money are you getting paid, I asked he said, oh, I don't get paid anything. I asked him, well, how many mansions does Gabriel Kruger own? And at that point, there's the conversation started coming. You don't want to answer any more questions. So I
was going to say, did they in that interview that
Gabriel
conversation?
Kruger, he has mansions in the breakaway that are the size of small towns. The guy has so much money, so he's utilizing that on slave labor. But we could sit here and complain about Gabriel Kruger, but honestly, Kruger is not as bad as some of the other planetary corporations. So I guess I just want to divert attention away from Kruger because I done work for them. Anyway.
Oh, let me ask you, do you think, how's this? everybody knows about all these technocratic kind of companies that are out there. Do you think that those really aren't the ones running the show? They're just become the chew toys,
What,
and
we're
really
talking
the
about
ones running
Lockheed
the show?
Martin. Yeah, like
Huh?
Lockheed Martin,
Yeah.
Boeing.
There's somebody else behind the scenes that if you said the name, either the person or the company, people would go, "Who is that?" Sometimes I get
Right.
that feeling.
Well, they're participating in it. They're benefiting from it. So they have an incentive to maintain the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a company like Raytheon. Supposedly, Raytheon owns the patent on the med bed and reaging technology.
Right. Yes, I've heard of that.
So they supposedly got their hands on it in the 1970s. So they had it all this time. They're using it off world, but they don't want to introduce it here
Let me
because
tell you something. Can you imagine? Oh my God. I'm just laughing. The actual introduction and use of a med bed, what that would do to the medical field and everybody that makes money from research on cures that never materialize.
exactly. Yeah, so the medical industry is going to be going out of business, and a lot of doctors that train in the allopathic medicine that got
Yes.
go through many years of study, all their degrees and diplomas are going to be worthless because now we're going to have a whole new technology. So they'll have to go get trained on that now. But some doctors are not going to be able to make the transition, but that's okay. My understanding is like when this NESARA announcement takes place, there's going to be so much money pumped into the system. Everyone's going to get paid off. So you don't have to worry about any pharmaceutical
Right.
company going out of business. But
Right. Well, you always think of that, people, and we could talk about, what's known or what's not known as far as inventions or cures, whatever, that if the solution is going to cost money, those solutions are never brought forward because there's too much money wrapped up in addressing the problem versus solving it. How's that? Whether it's in energy or medicine or anything, it's like, no. There's too much money being made
on the treatment,
for
not the cure.
exactly. And it's like, makes you wonder how many things are out there that we just
Yeah.
don't know about. And I think that's one of the things, hopefully, that's going to come about as far as whether it's, like I said, energy or medicine. God knows, medicine.
Essentially. And we can end ignorance on this planet. So with the trip seat
Yes.
technology, potentially, yeah. Hold on a second. 2 hours, you can learn a language. Let's see here. Like I think it was like 2 days, you can learn a PhD. Like 2 weeks or a month, you can learn all PhDs. So we could, everybody on this planet could potentially become geniuses with the trip seat technology, and then reaging technology. Well, it can be ideally they want to keep people around the age of 30 because if you take a 70-year, let's say they could take a 70-year-old individual male and bring them back to the age of 21. What you'll find is the maturity offer goes away. So that 70-year-old individual is now going to be out partying, drinking. Maybe they still do it at 70, but at 21 it's going to be even more so. So they're going to
limit little kid partying next to you. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to limit to about the age of 30, obviously. So for like women, maybe you could be like 25 and male be 30 or something like that.
Oh, that would you remember? I don't know if you remember that movie Logan's Run when it came out. That basically I think it was either 30 or 33. That this was the lifespan. You were treated very nice and it was great, but then you did that rebirth. Basically, you were being killed, but they were being cloned, and that was it. The lifespan was that's it. This is like at your zenith.
So there are planets in the breakaway where they're very volcanic, maybe where they're mining red mercury, for instance. And the atmosphere is so toxic that the people there may only live for about 35 years. So so they would take people that were undesirable as criminals, for example, and utilize them in the secret space program where they could send them back in time 1,000 years to go set up a colony on this planet to mine this mineral. And when they come back, go back into the future or to the present, 1,000 years later, the colony is already fully developed and you have supply lines and supply chains and all that ready to go. So certainly
in other words, do Let me tell you something. There's so many possibilities once you go beyond, you know, and I understand we get caught up in present time with present day problems. God knows there's a lot of stuff going on, but that, when you step back, you look at. I want to ask you one last thing in parting, James. What do you think of flat Earth theory?
So I'm looking into this, and this is what's confusing about flat Earth. Okay, there are some people that are from this other alternate dimension or timeline or dimension.
Okay.
That is flat. It's like a two-dimensional reality, and so when they come into this dimension, they have they has a hard time understanding how we're not flat. Okay. So it's sort of like, think of like some children are very dyslexic, but what they really are is they are ET soul or souls from another ET body that read in reverse. So that is what I believe is going on with some of these people. Now, however, with that said, looking at planet Earth, there's something about it that's not right. For instance, I asked Peter the Insider this question: is the Earth flat around? And he told me that it's onion. So there are multiple layers upon layers. And when you're looking up, what you're thinking are the stars may not be the stars. It might be a mirage because we're on some kind of matrix. So the planet, is it round? It certainly looks round, but that also might be a mirage. We might be in some kind of dome with an ice wall around us. But, people that have been in outer space say the planet is definitely round. Okay. But the question is this area that we're in a dome inside this super Earth or not? So,
like the Truman Show on steroids.
Or what Peter said, where there's multiple layers. Are we in one of these layers and there's other layers? Honestly, I think I need to do a show on this. Let's get this over once and for all. Let's figure it out.
Well, that thing, and the reason why I ask you is that one of the premises of flat Earth is that there's continents beyond, if you go with a premise, let's go down that rabbit hole. And, that there's continents and land masses beyond what we think of as normally the Earth, what we see, the continents and the seas. And the premise is that there's land masses out beyond, and that there's, as a matter of fact, travel, let's say, on the oceans, there's certain points where you will not be able to go beyond that. Not because you can't physically, but because you're not allowed to. I was like, okay, it's a real
plane over the poles.
Right, something along those lines.
You're going to go inside the Earth. There's holes. There's a hole north of so it's on the western end of Greenland. If you go north up there into the ocean, another like 100 miles out in the ocean, there's a hole right there that they Google images are
right. So there's a lot of stuff that's coming out that it's like a mind bender, but at the same time it's like, well, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Maybe some of it you might think, but there's something more to that than that's plausible. I mean, you don't go through, that's the thing. You don't go your whole life thinking of the Earth. And as a matter of fact, oh boy, I hope I didn't fade out. One of the things that they were talking about was that Galileo, the one with the round, the idea of the round thing, that he was made up, that he wasn't real. I was like, okay, I need to know how'd that happen? In other words, that there was tweaking of historical figures that basically were made up. And I was like, I don't know how we would ever verify that one way or the other. So there you go.
Exactly. So looking into like Tartaria information, it looks like humanity has been reset numerous amounts of times. Right. So for instance, I already talked about the reset 1814. So before then, we were basically in the Dark Ages. Hold on. Going back, let's go back earlier in that to the year 1280. So around planet Earth around the year 1280, remote viewing, Paris, we see flying ships. About 30% of the population are giants, other 30% are aliens, and 33% humanoids are humanoid size. So Tartaria, it looks like it's all over the entire world. So around the year 1280, a group of negative ETs, the Valkesh, the Matra. So let's see here. the custodians were involved in that one, the Draco. There's another group of ET come to me, but so yeah, there was essentially a reset where they damaged one of the domes that were protecting one of these cities, and they started. It took about 20 years, but they basically reset the whole planet. So so from that period, it looks like the area of Tartaria north of China still was technologically advanced, and then they had little outposts all around the world, but essentially we went into the Dark Ages. So if you look at like cathedrals, they have these cathedrals in Europe, and if you look at them, they have these buttresses, and they're telling us, oh, well, because they didn't really have the technology back then. What we see is that it was actually very technologically advanced. Those buttresses are in the ground to get earth energy. So when you go inside these buildings, they're for healing purposes. So it wasn't, so essentially we lost a lot of that technology. And then in 1814, that area of Tartaria, north of China, north of China, that area went down.
Right. That if you look at it, if you look at some of these cathedrals, that they have those vaulted ceilings, that you're thinking, how could they know to the architecture to keep these ceilings from falling in? I mean, these are tons of, the material is very, very heavy. I mean, you look at, and there's reference, I believe, sometimes, you've seen the steampunk kind of visions where it's like, it's steam driven, which of course is a steam, but then you see advancements in there. Some people allude that that's a version of maybe something that existed at one point, where there was certain advances and not others, but by choice. How's that? We use certain advancements, but you don't use others, but it's not because you didn't know about them. It's just that, hey, we're just going to use this. Versus
there's many different alternate timelines, realities. There was a mission that we did at Montauk where they sent us back in time to the 1850s, and this was like a steampunk type civilization. So they came up with this new technology where they would have these frequencies that would radiate. I don't know if it was energy, it would radiate something, but the results of that had turned everybody into zombies. So they would send us back. Yeah, we shifted that timeline, but the idea of the steampunk civilization, all that is real. It's part of our consciousness. We just don't remember it. That's
right.
It's on a subconscious level.
Yes. And I think sometimes don't get me wrong. I'm all for technology, but I think that sometimes certain civilizations, whatever they are, they understand that some technology is like, let's leave that on the shelf because that doesn't work well with humanity. Okay. It doesn't work well with humans. So we'll use this type of technology, but not this other one. But again, it's by choice. It's not because we're ignorant of what's available. What is that thing about the KISS theme? The KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Like sometimes simple is better for humans as far as, I don't know, for existence. How's that? Even now, look at that. We're swamped in technology. Look, I tell my audience all the time, this is it. See, I was alive before this was ever invented. I was alive before, beepers and pagers and answering machines. And you know what? I was completely happy. I didn't feel like I was missing out. You understand? And now this is taken over, big time. Even with the youth, as far as they're saying, as how much time they're spending caught up in this, and God knows this is great when you have a flat tire, but at the same time, it's become a double-edged sword. Be quiet, trouble. As far as what it's done or not or harmed us, I think in some cases, because I think it's stumped us intellectually. For people write emojis versus writing out, the word. Things of this nature. I don't know. That's why I'm saying technology by choice, not by necessity.
Understood. Okay.
So, James, it has been wonderful to talk to you. I mean, this is great.
Certainly.
If you want to, for my, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, you can get a copy of my book on my website, Neological Tech.
Yes.
So it's like 400 pages. So it goes into I go into all the different planetary corporations, some of my own experiences. Talk about some of the technology, the SSP. I also have these meditation cubes to help you relax. Got like 11 of these left in stock. You can get one of those. help you out. Yeah. So that the website.
Let me ask you something. Can anybody who wants to remote view, can they use those meditation cubes for remote viewing? Or as a
absolutely. Well, the cubes, they're a chi energizer, so they're going to help you relax and go into a state of alternate consciousness. So that particular cube right there has 6 pyramids inside. They all point inward. There's orgone material inside there. So in crystal, crystal skulls that I have put inside that. So
okay, all right, cool. For my podcast listeners, what is the best way to find you?
Go to supersoldiertalk.com. You would find the links to Rumble, because you should subscribe on Rumble, because YouTube is censoring my Super Soldier Talk channel there.
You're kidding. They're censoring. How could they?
I've had 12 videos deleted by YouTube. And I've also had to delete like 50 of my own, because this was what happened is we had one guy. Is this going on YouTube? Because if it's going on YouTube, I won't.
This is, yes, it is. It's okay. It's going on Fluffy too, but I also, yeah, it is.
We'll just skip. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, I know. I get it. Believe me. So the best, basically what you're saying is all your videos though, as the ones is that you can find them on Rumble. As far as
the full archive, including the 2 years that were censored by
right. Is that so? If anybody wants to go back, they're going to be able to find them on Rumble. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. There you go. That's where I was going with this. Yes, that's why I have a channel on Rumble too, because you never know. You never know.
Save a backup on your hard drive too.
Oh, you better believe it. I've got 2 terabyte hard drives right here sitting next to my desktop. Absolutely. Good. Oh, for sure. No, that's one thing you learn is like, yeah, that thing about it's in the clouds. Sure. Anyway, thank you, James.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, all listeners, for listening.
It's been wonderful to talk to you. And I want to wish you the best of luck, and we will be talking soon for sure.
All right. Well,
take care.
Have a wonderful day. See you all.
Likewise. Bye-bye. Bye. I love talking to him because, man, let me tell you, when you want to go way out, you talk to James Rink. I'm serious. And I brought those, because there's so many things that I could talk to James about. That's why I brought up that thing about those 2 stories. The ones with Who Goes There and Farewell to the Master. Because like I said, a lot of these stories, they were developed into film enough. Like I said, Hollywood does their own version of it. But for example, that Farewell to the Master, which basically ends, the end thing was that the master was the robot. And I saw that as a tie-in to present day, where we're going these back and forth with the AI thing, as far as sentience and an AI, or even cybernetics, where humans will be, what's the word I'm looking for? Enhanced with robotics. We got to be real careful with that. That's a slippery slope downward. And let me explain. And I'm going to use, everybody I'm sure has saw the first movie of Alien. Okay. No, I'm sorry. Number two, where Ripley, the character Ripley, jumps into that, basically it's like a forklift, but it's a full thing. She jumps into it, and basically it's robotics, but it's not sentient. She has to turn it on, and she can wield it. And usually it's used in the ship to move heavy things, but it encases her. That kind of robotics I can understand. Absolutely. I'm all for that. Anything that's going to either protect or enhance our strength, I'm good with that. But like I said, and if anybody check me on this, you will see that almost all those movies put out in the late 70s and 80s, especially, where they happen to make the mistake of making the robot the villain. Part 2, they fixed that real quick. They want to sell us on this thing of robots being the savior, robots helping us, robots being sentient and looking at us with big eyes and all that crap. You have to be, you have to look at, because I think that whoever does these film understands the human psychology very well. All right. I'm going to give you for instance, like when when you looked at E.T., extraterrestrial, when that movie came out, you look at E.T. and it's like, oh, that's pretty ugly, extraterrestrial. But because they had to portray him as an extraterrestrial, as a non-humanoid, but they did certain things about him. Human beings respond to big eyes. Why? Because babies have big eyes. So they do these pick and choose certain things that they know the human psyche will respond positively towards. Same thing with what they've done with this thing with robots, or robots becoming sentient, and us being unaware, and this poor robot cares because it's being asked to do slave-like things. That other movie that they did, Prometheus, which is supposed to be a prequel to Alien, supposedly one of the androids or robots basically goes mad because it's being told what to do, and it's become, in other words, it's sentient like a human. So it bothers it that it's being told to do this and to do that. And I think that's a big myth. All right, but we still have to be careful, because how's this? How about if whoever programs a robot or robotics, they disguise it to make it look to what we normally respond positively towards, whether it's a child, something with big eyes, that they blink at you, and certain facial expressions. And basically we're being manipulated, because that's how we're engineered. That's our head is engineered. And somebody that knows is like, yeah, we need these humans to get on board with and we'll make it look like the robot is sentient, but the robot's not sentient. It's not. Okay. It's not. It's like saying, hey, my computer is sentient. It's not. All right. In other words, sentient means it feels. It can feel this, it can feel that. So as long as we don't see that, but if they want to feed us, though, they could. I don't know if anybody's seen those dogs that they have, those dog robots. I mean, they're scary, but they have no head. And people look at that and you're like, holy crap. As a matter of fact, they're almost intimidating because they're so robotic looking. Why? Because the purpose is not to make the purpose of those dogs, from what I've seen, even the ones that they mounted supposedly these machine guns or guns on them or whatever, they're not meant to try to induce the fuzzy feeling in you. They're made as intimidation. And if you look at something walking around that's all metal with no head, and it's got a firearm that's been stuck on its back, I guarantee you're going to think like, I think I better do what that thing says. Hello? It depends. Bottom line, it always comes down to manipulating us by understanding our psychology. All right? And we have to be really aware of this, as far as how our empathy or sympathy is being used against us, whether they use the portrayal of children or the robot that's coming alive and really cares about us and loves us, but we're treating it like a poor machine and it really cares. It's like, stop it. This is like, hey, you got an old bicycle, you got to get rid of it. I mean, about the closest thing I can think of is I've had cars that I've had for a really long time. And when it comes to the point to turning them in, I feel like kind of bad. But then I realize basically what I'm feeling bad about is the memories that I have attached to the car. All right. Not the car itself. Yes, I love the car because maybe it was reliable and I liked it. But more when I really start to think about it, really what I'm attached to is my experiences or my memories while I had that car. Going here, going there. Hopefully they were all good memories. It's not that car is not alive. It's not, doesn't care. Okay. And I think that all humans have a degree of animism in us. All right. Where we see, how can I tell, human-like qualities and things. I'll tell you what, I believe in plants. I believe plants have feelings. I play music for my plants. Okay. And my animals and my chickens, everybody gets here and I talk to them. Yeah, you might think she's crazy, but that's different. I'm talking here about a metal or wooden object that is, I'm sorry, it's not sentient. And that's something I think that us living into the future have to be really careful what we think of. And plus, I do foresee, unless something happens, that there will come a time where they're going to introduce robots more and more into the workplace, because whether you want to look at it as either lack of workers available, or they're not smart enough, or not competent enough, or just because manpower. These businesses, well, that's been the plan all along. I don't know what to tell you. They're going to be like, hey, if I want to keep my business open, I got to have somebody here that's going to be able to serve my customers or put stuff on the shelves or whatever. And you can see this coming down the pike. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that the solution that they're going to point at is always going to be robotics. Next thing you know, you go to the big W store, I'm not going to say, and the greeter is not a human being.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the bad audio. Internet went wonky, but I will see you next week. And remember, you are all wonderful. Take care.